Storms are fascinating. Every winter, the eastern Atlantic is the scene of the oceanic furies, when the wind whips up the waves that tear the ocean apart. The Shetland Islands, north of Scotland, the Azores, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and Brittany, where the land ends. These are the places where the storms that offer such a spectacle for sailors and land dwellers alike are born. We've gone in search of storms to capture the pure beauty of the sea and the luminous sky. On this voyage into the heart of the elements, we met men that took on the fury of the oceans, eyewitnesses of a display of raging force that is usually played out unseen. Most people are familiar with the name of these islands, but would have a hard time locating them on a map. Beneath this layer of clouds lie the Azores. They're not really Europe anymore, and not yet America. This Portuguese archipelago, a long way from any continent, is made up of 9 islands lost out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. In the extreme west of the archipelago are Flores and Corvo, the smallest and most remote islands of the Azores. For centuries, they have remained isolated from the rest of the world. Mauro Lopes is the captain of the Santa Iria, the boat that does the regular run between the 2 islands. His boat is a vital link for the inhabitants of Corvo and Flores. Mauro was born into a family of seafarers. More than 60 years ago, his grandfather was doing the same job, linking the islands and their inhabitants.
First off, if I didn't have such a strong attachment to the sea, to the nature here, to this island, and to the people here, I wouldn't have such a strong desire to stay here. I don't know. I probably could live somewhere else, but only if I really had to. I could adapt to somewhere else, but I would never leave this place of my own free will, not for anything in the world.
The archipelago in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean is 1,200 kilometers from Lisbon. In winter, the inhabitants of the Azores have a front row seat on the storms. The bad weather has set in now. Here, the sea and nature do their worst, and the Azores in the front line bear the full brunt of the Atlantic depressions. The inhabitants of Flores are getting hit with the winter's first storm. The little port of Santa Cruz is powerless before the fury of the weather. It's as if the raging sea wanted to swallow up everything.
The door's stuck. We can't get it open. We want to get the car out of the way, but we can't. The tide's coming in. The waves are going to keep getting higher. It's getting worse. In an hour, it'll be even worse still. Normally it should calm down by tomorrow. Normally.
The storm. For the seafarers, this is a force 10 on the Beaufort scale. High waves, white sea, waves 9 to 12 meters high, winds of 50 knots, 90 to 100 kilometers an hour. The island's harbors provide hardly any protection from the lashing seas. The sailors hunker down. The Santa Iria seems extremely fragile facing the elements. Before nightfall, Mauro and his crew will lock horns with the sea.
We can't beach the boat. This boat has to go to Corvo twice a week. So we don't have the time to get the Santa Iria on dry land. And that's why she has to stay in the water.
The Santa Iria's mission is bringing supplies in for the families on Corvo. It's an easy run in good weather, but when the sea turns into white froth like this, it's a mission impossible.
I dropped 4 anchors and 6 or 7 mooring lines on the bow and 4 on the stern, 2 on either side, because the waves are hitting us head on, in line with the port. There's no way we would get any sleep anyway. We'll spend the night here checking the lines, and we'll keep an eye on the sea to see if it gets worse or not.
By nightfall, they've made the boat as secure as possible. Now the only thing they can do is cross their fingers and hope for the best. The worst of the storm is still to come. The night promises to be an ordeal for the captain of the Santa Iria. The Azores are exposed to the full brunt of the storms. Out in the middle of the Atlantic, there are no obstacles to stop the swell and waves. All during the winter, low-pressure systems cross the ocean. Most of the time, they end up on the coast of Brittany.
As we were hoping, the swell is still strong.
It's beautiful, the light's superb. We're 20 minutes from low tide.
Today, these 2 storm chasers have decided to work on the island of Ouessant in Brittany, with the wind, the waves, and the light.
This is where I learned to fly in Brittany. I really started out here in the Iroise Sea. It was and still is my playground for taking pictures. It's in a class by itself. Nowhere like it in the world. This is good. Jean, you must have the waves in the shot there in front of you, right?
I have the waves in the foreground and the lighthouse to the right in the background.
Look what's coming up on the right.
Sometimes we have intense low-pressure systems, but with strong, short, gusty winds, so the swell doesn't rise. You can't see wind in a photo. For me, photographer, the expression of the wind is the swell and waves. No swell, no storm.
Jean Guichard, the photographer, and Thierry Legnac, the pilot, are flirting with the waves. They've been working together for years and trust each other implicitly. In the midst of the breakers, it's easy to forget the danger.
We're riding on hell. The waves are breaking. We're 5 meters above water. Safe in this helicopter, but just 5 meters below, we'd be dead. The waves get ripped apart on the reefs of the Pernes Cape and in front of the Créache lighthouse. If we go down, there's no way they'll pick us up. It's really paradoxical and surprising to be safe in such a dangerous, risky place. When you're 10 meters above water and you pull the helicopter up to avoid the waves, you're a bit like a surfer that remains dry.
I'm playing with the waves. If you feel some jolts, it's because when the waves arrive, I pull up. I'm not watching the shots you're taking. I've got my eye on the waves. What do you think about what's below us?
Magnificent. We'll just hover a bit.
Further out, it's stunning. There's an enormous wave on the right.
You'll have to get behind. Can you see how it's exploding?
Look at that.
Magnificent. Tell me when I can open the door.
Whenever you like.
There we are. We're a bit high.
You want the lantern above the horizon? There you have it.
Bring her to the other side of Levitt with Wesson behind us, okay?
I won't be able to hold her steady because we have a tailwind, but I can work it like this, see? Some people call me reckless. But if it were really risky, I wouldn't be flying. I'd find another job. Working with experienced people's a real advantage. People I don't have to look after. That's a huge workload off my shoulders. If there's a risk, it's a calculated risk. On the other hand, managing the flight itself to get the best shots, I try to see what I can offer by turning my head, seeing the subject to the left of the helicopter. But if you're flying in hellish conditions, you have to be careful of the waves coming in on the opposite side, because we're often working in strong swell and high waves. It's not uncommon to use a helicopter because this is what it's built for. I'm exaggerating a bit, but we wouldn't do this in a plane, whereas a helicopter allows us to fly in strong, gusty winds. The exciting part is not being the only ones here. It's more having the privilege of working on subjects that, that make the news. This is the storm season, so we'll obviously try to get pictures to show that we had a fantastic storm.
The intrepid storm hunters are, each in his own field, artists. Thanks to their complicity and experience, they manage to get stunning shots.
When the ocean's really pounding away, with a good swell, the waves are almost as high as the lighthouse. They almost reach the top.
It's beautiful when it's all white like that. I love it. This one's going to be great. Great timing there. Jean and I may be used to it, but when a wave slams into the lighthouse and explodes into a spectacular splash of light, we comment over the radio. That was a beauty. We express it. We here in the front row feel that emotion, and I like to share it with others.
There has to be harmony with the pilot. He's the boss, of course. I know what I want, and I tell him, but he's the one who decides. If I ask him to hover over closer to the lighthouse, where it's not feasible, and the helicopter could stall and go down, so when you're 15-20 meters above water, there's no time to pull up. It's really dangerous. It's like a washing machine down there. I really can't see how we could survive.
They've been flying for 2 hours between sky and foam. Now the fading daylight is making the pilot's job more and more difficult, and shooting is getting trickier.
It's too late now. Even if we wait for the squalls to pass, it's all over. It'll be too late.
It's the warm-up.
Yeah, rendezvous tomorrow.
(1,500 kilometers from Wesson, off the north coast of Scotland. We're in the same ocean, but these are different islands, the Shetlands.
Wind presently 130 degrees at 22 knots. There's quite a strong crosswind, about 22 knots, but it's marginal, but it's safe limits, so yeah, it's good pilot too. Today, 5 high school children are coming home for the weekend. The plane is also carrying some essential supplies that we've been waiting for 10 days.
Back in the days when Fair Isle could be reached only by boat, the men had to leave the island to escape poverty and to feed their families. Today, the airplane allows the islanders to live as other Shetlanders do, or almost. Even when the storms over the Atlantic reinforce the feeling of isolation. Fair Isle doesn't belong to any one person. It's common land and belongs to all. Since 1948, each family rents their house from the National Trust for Scotland, the bureau in charge of the conservation of Scottish heritage.
I grew up playing on these pieces of land and around these cliffs and that, so I always think of this place as being my home. If my mother knew how often I very nearly became part of the cliffs, she would be very cross with me because we grew up here. As you imagine a 5-year-old boy going and always going that wee bit further and always trying to catch that wee bit, you know, whatever. And there was a couple of times I might not have been here, you know. But I mean, yeah, very much. You grow up, you become part of the place, it becomes part of you. Yeah, it's lovely.
These Celtic lands are an oceanic symphony composed of luminous waves and dark mountains.
Camden! Camden! Camden!
Never. Never feel alone. I have all this. That's all you need. Come, boy, come. That's a good dogs. That's a good dogs.
Neil Thompson lives on one of the Shetland's most isolated islands. Fair Isle is a community of men and women who stand together. Torrey is a protected area. Here in the far corner of the world, Neil can contemplate his tiny realm.
I'm come to step I must. I'm come to make this train. I shall go who is due to stay wind.
Fair Isle, the island of fairness. Could this be the land of the just? A spot where the isolation has forced the inhabitants to live together and share their only riches, freedom and unbounded nature.
Du kennst willen me we talk our life and on. Every time we grab our lines and wave along, there's a harmony that's hard to play like that. It's been a cloudy. Yeah, it's been a cloudy.
The Shetlands are a group of islands lost in the north of Europe, between Norway and Scotland. They are hammered by the sea and buffeted by the wind. Sailors the world over fear storms. This Scottish archipelago affords scarce shelter for ship and crew. One of the only safe havens protected from the northwest winds is the harbor of Lerwick on the main island. When boats seek shelter here, everyone knows that they're in for bad weather and that a fascinating spectacle is in the making. Here, on the same latitude as Greenland, is where the North Sea and the Atlantic meet. In the Shetlands, the wind mixes with the land, with the sky, and with the sea. These craggy cliffs form the last ramparts of a rugged land. One of Fair Isle's 2 wind generators has been hit by the storm and has to be put back in place as quickly as possible before winter. The job is proving more difficult than expected. The wind is getting up and the atmosphere has become quite tense.
Come on, fuck's sake, come on! Come on! Or kick your fucking arse! Enough of it, right? You do not walk below anything, you've been told, right?
%80 of Fair Isle's energy comes from wind power. The islanders don't expect any help from the outside. They have to work things out for themselves and face the elements. Much further south, in the heart of the Atlantic Ocean, are the Azores. The wind has stiffened a notch in the port of Lajes. Mauro has come to make sure that the moorings of his boat, the Santa Iria, are holding fast.
Aí está a brigada aqui, tá bom?
We're sheltered for the moment because the winds are in from the
Oeste é a
southeast.
brigada, neste canto.
It's bad,
Vai piorar.
really bad.
Ao longo da noite,
It's going to get
o vento vai
worse.
virar pouco para aqui. Tem que ter a certeza
During the
que
night,
este
the
está
wind is going to shift
só a funcionar bem,
in this
forte
direction.
e protegido.
And I have to make sure the
Estes
lines
caras
will
vão
hold.
salvar, vão agarrar o
The
barco
boat
durante
is
a
going to
noite,
pull
quando o
on
vento
this
virar
line
para
when the
fora.
wind
Por
shifts.
agora ainda está.
We're okay for now.
Nunca posso ir dentro do barco durante a noite.
I can't get on board at night.
É muito perigoso ir
It's too
ir ao
dangerous.
barco. Também é perigoso.
It's even dangerous right here.
Mais longe, as ondas vão ser maiores.
The waves could get worse tonight.
Bem maior.
The only thing I can do is keep a close watch.
É a única coisa que posso
Stay alert.
estar
And that's all.
aqui, observador, pouco mais. A igreja também olha por nós.
We're protected by the church.
Afasta mal.
It wards off the bad weather. All the churches face the sea, so there's always someone watching over us.
All through the night, the island of Flores is lashed by the wind and rain. At daybreak, the little mountain cascades have swollen into powerful torrents gushing from the cliffs. Battered by the raging forces of nature, Flores is suffering the worst storm of the winter. The archipelago has become the destination of the foam that breaks on the slick black rocks. The sea is pounded by the wind and waves. The howls of the sea make the islands tremble.
Just call if you want increased rate of climb, descent, whatever.
That's looking good.
Okay.
In the North Atlantic, the sea offers very little respite between two storms.
Slow right turn. Slow one, yeah.
Oscar Charlie, a name synonymous with courage and devotion, is the Scottish Coast Guard search and rescue helicopter, and all the islanders are familiar with it. Oscar Charlie takes to the Shetland skies in all weather, ready to come to the rescue at sea and in the island's remotest spots.
Oscar Charlie is very well known throughout the islands. She's a very important asset to the community in Shetland. And over the years, she has helped and she will continue to help the people that live here in Shetland. Oscar Charlie is a reliable, robust workhorse that keeps us safe and enables us to do a job where we can help people.
Oscar Charlie is the helicopter's code name. Its area of operations is primarily maritime and covers a vast zone between northern Scotland, Norway, and the Faroe Islands. Whether they be fishermen or workers on the North Sea oil platforms, thousands of men may one day need to call Oscar Charlie for help. Out at sea, far from the nearest land, the helicopter is the only way to evacuate an injured person. Oscar Charlie's rescue crew goes out at any time and in any weather. They carry out more than 100 missions a year. A storm over the Atlantic is never routine, and certain rescues can never be forgotten. A bitter cold night off the Shetlands. The fishing boat, the Be Ready, tossed about by a raging sea, had been burning for several hours. For the crew, the only thing left to do was abandon ship to save their skins. Despite the extreme conditions, they managed to lower one of Oscar Charlie's men onto the trawler to help evacuate the crew from the boat. Given the urgency and the proximity of the raging flames, the Be Ready's crew had to jump overboard to reach the life raft before being winched to safety. That night, Oscar Charlie saved the lives of 5 Scottish fishermen trapped by fire on the high seas.
I wanted to become a helicopter pilot from a very early age, from about the age of 5. That's about the time when we moved here to Shetland, within about 4 miles of the airport. So we used to see helicopters flying over the house on a regular basis, and it was that influence that made me want to fly. So it was a childhood dream, really, to find myself in one of these, and eventually that dream came true.
The young pilot got his vocation at an early age. He followed the example of his father, Kieran Sr., who had a long career with the Scottish Coast Guard on board the Oscar Charlie. His entire life, thousands of rescue missions. Kieran Sr. has now passed the torch.
I'm a bit bigger now.
Yeah. And then there's your gliding days. I think that was down at, is that down Leonsolin?
Leonsolin, yeah. I'm 16 now. And we don't have some ridiculous aviator shades.
Well, he's still got them.
I still got them there.
Then that's...
Yeah, it was a mixture of feelings, really. I didn't, when I first started flying, ever envisage that I'd have an opportunity to fly with Dad. At that time, my career was going off on a separate path, and it wasn't until about 7.5 years later we had an opportunity to fly together. And so when it came, then it was a momentous occasion. It was a great feeling to have Dad in the aircraft with myself.
Follow starboard. Yeah, Jimmy, can you somebody? You will orange. Follow down. Mission clear. What? The ice control village.
The Coast Guardsmen have all had very different professional backgrounds. Many of them are former Royal Navy or Air Force men, veterans of Iraq or the Falklands. In the world of rescue services, the Scottish Coast Guard has the reputation of being among the best.
During the summer, it's a beautiful place to live and work, but during the winter, it can be challenging. The flying's challenging, the weather's usually poor, it's usually nighttime, and because of the wind, the vessels that we go to are usually moving around a lot, so it takes a great deal of skill to get people off.
NG1 and 2, TTT's below 150, max 18 seconds on the starter. Advance.
Clear winch?
Yeah, clear winch.
Bringing it out the door. It's going out.
As winchman, he is the one most exposed to danger of the 4 men on board.
For myself on the end of the wire, I get to see the elements a lot closer than the rest of the crew sometimes. And to look at I get a good look at the sea state, and you get very used to looking at, you know, what's going to be good for you, what's going to be bad. You can enjoy the view sometimes on the end of the wire, and sometimes you want to close your eyes because it can be, you know, it can be so rough that you just want to get onto the vessel in a high sea state. But it is a fantastic area to fly in, and a privilege for everybody in the crew.
It's not uncommon to get wind speeds of over 100 miles an hour. Now, obviously, we're not trained in that sort of weather, but we have gone and rescued in that sort of weather. That produces very heavy seas, tremendous swells, and we'll always go and look at the vessel, and if it, at the end of the day, if the crew decide we're not going to winch to it, then we won't winch. But those are very few and far between. From an older captain, I remember him saying, we are a crew, we're a team of 4. When we go out on a rescue or on a mission as a team of 4, we will come back with at least 4. And that puts it all into perspective, and it's nice.
Brittany, Europe's westernmost peninsula. Like the Celtic lands of the Shetlands, the island of Ouessant is a region of storms. Qui voit Ouessant, voit son sang. If you see Ouessant, you see your blood. The old sea proverb is quite explicit. Here too, rescue workers keep watch over the coast. For a long time, this was the mission of Jean Bulot. He was captain of a rescue tugboat on the high seas. The tip of Brittany and the entrance to the English Channel form one of the world's major sea routes. Over 600 freighters, container ships, and oil tankers pass by this coast every day. For his entire life, Jean Bulot has been ready to come to their assistance.
We worked in the worst meteorological conditions, nasty weather. And each time with every storm, we'd bring the rescued boats back to Brest or Cherbourg, and they'd call me Captain Storm. That's how I got my nickname. Raging weather, as we call it, is when you get a wind blowing between force 9 and force 12. Off the Ouessant Island, at the mouth of the channel, we had 20-meter waves. And we did rescues in these 20-meter waves. Yes, it brings back fond memories. That's for sure. And sometimes I dream about it. I don't know why. But I'm back on board. And I'm not 50 or 55 like when I retired. I'm 75, like I am now. And it's strange. Well, it's just a dream.
Jean Bulot was Captain Storm. He commanded this legendary boat, l'Abbé Flandre, a rescue tug capable of standing up to Brittany's most extreme conditions to help ships in trouble. Today, Jean is with the crew of the SNSM, the French Volunteer Coast Guard, on a rescue boat from Port Salle. They're heading for a precise spot in the Iroise Sea where a maritime catastrophe changed the fate of all Brittany and provoked the anger of all seafarers. On a stormy night in 1978, the Amoco Cadiz, an oil tanker carrying over 230,000 tons of crude oil, ran aground on the Port Salle rocks, causing one of the worst oil spills in history.
You have to imagine yourself in the middle of all that, the waves crashing into the cliffs, a boat that's drifting and about to run aground on the rocks. Luckily, the Amoco accident happened at night. They didn't see it, but they'd have jumped overboard.
Jean wants to transmit the human values of sea rescue to the younger generation.
They take big risks, especially the men on the aft deck. Most of the time, they don't see the wave coming because they're busy with something else. So there's the old saying, one hand for yourself and one hand for the boat. And when someone does notice something, they'll communicate with gestures or shouting because there's so much noise around with the engines, the wind. Covers everything. The guys can get tossed around, and the steel cables can start lashing around. The guy can't get free, and he can be cut in two or swept overboard.
During his 15 years at the helm of the Abbé Flandre, Jean Bulot was one of the guardian angels of the Brittany coast. All his life, Jean has spoken out against the folly of humans, the oil spills, and the sailors that are abandoned. Captain Bulot never left the community of seafolk. Now Jean Bulot is a writer, and he draws on his real-life experiences for the raw material of his stories. A tireless spinner of sea yarns, Jean has a sea gaze in his eyes and sea salt in his memories. They say that these sailors are willing to put their life on the line in order to save the lives of others.
Abbé Bourbon, come in. This is from Vertu.
They're anonymous heroes in the heart of the storm. In the course of his career at sea, Jean Bulot and his crews have assisted 200 ships in distress.
Hello, Wesson, Fox Romeo Delta. We're leaving the Duchesse Anne, heading for the Créache lighthouse.
The island of Ouessant is undoubtedly the most beautiful place to observe storms in France. Our photographer and helicopter pilot are going back in time and the history of lighthouses.
There's a series of waves.
Yeah, okay, not too close. Not too close.
A lighthouse out at sea belongs to the ocean. Undertaking such works meant defying Neptune himself. Lighthouses are built in the most improbable places. In good weather, they remind one of giant abandoned toys. In bad weather, it's a romantic fortress attacked by the waves and the wind. Lighthouses in a storm have always been the target of pounding assaults that boom like cannons in a never-ending battle. To be at sea without reference points is distressing. For sailors, lighthouses are a promise of safety, a beacon of hope. A lighthouse is a worrisome place to live. The life of the lighthouse keeper has been romanticized, but in reality, it was an ordeal of cold and humidity.
Wow, that was a beauty. The best one of all. Okay, let's call it a day.
From the helicopter, the two storm hunters give us the point of view of the gannets and gulls. A spectacle that only the ocean can give us.
You can't do what you want in a storm. You always have to be humble and conscious of your limits and not overstep them. I don't push my limits. I stay within what I know.
I really like Turner, the painter. Cape Pern is one of my favorite spots. With its subtle light, its passing squalls, the warm glow of clouds at sunrise and sunset. The light here is extraordinary. It's an opera, a maritime opera.
The wind has dropped. The sea has calmed down. Jean, the photographer, has an unexpected encounter. Another little message from the ocean.
Théodore Malgon, the most famous lighthouse keeper in the world. In the world.
Oh, let's not overdo it.
I say that because he's the man in the doorway of the famous photo of La Jument Lighthouse of 1989. The first photo I did of a lighthouse in a storm.
Well, it was a fluke. A fluke. I heard the noise, I stepped out and saw the helicopter, and suddenly I realized they were taking pictures. Pictures of the storm.
The door of La Jument Lighthouse is now closed for good. Théodore Malgon is one of the last witnesses of the golden age of lighthouse keepers at sea and the storms over the Atlantic.